So continuing the playoff prediction series for the first round or the play-in series, we're going to be continuing things as we head to the Western Conference matchup between the Vancouver Canucks, the number 7 Vancouver Canucks against the number 10 Minnesota Wild. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey and want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below, and let's take a look at this matchup between the Vancouver Canucks and the Minnesota Wild. Looking at both these teams, they're in pretty different scenarios. The Minnesota Wild seem like they are going to be starting a rebuild or a retool of the organization. They traded a guy like Jason Zucker. There were rumors they could make even more moves at the trade deadline. Bill Guerin's probably happy he didn't make any of those moves at this point because they're possibly going to make the playoffs. The Vancouver Canucks are on the up. They've been drafting high over the past couple of years, and they seem like they are ready to take the next step, get back into the playoffs here, and really go on a run. And we're going to take a look at this matchup, starting off with the Vancouver Canucks. The power play for the Canucks, one of the top 5 in the NHL, 24% for the Vancouver Canucks, pretty solid, and their penalty kill is pretty solid as well, 80%. That's a huge difference maker for the Vancouver Canucks. Could definitely be a momentum shifter in a series. And I think the Vancouver Canucks could definitely use their special teams to their advantage. The Minnesota Wild, if they sit in the box too much in this series, this could be a problem, and a problem quickly for the Minnesota Wild. Looking at the record for the Vancouver Canucks, 36-27-6. Pretty solid record for the Vancouver Canucks. Nothing to really write home about, but again, a pretty solid record overall. Looking at the guy to watch, and I don't think anybody's going to be too surprised here. I have the guy to watch for the Vancouver Canucks is Elias Pettersson. He is so dynamic. He is just unbelievable, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he does in the big moments in the playoffs. Will he be able to handle the adversity and the spotlight? I think that's going to be huge for Petey in this series. Not to mention, I think another guy, I usually name one guy, but I think JT Miller is absolutely another player to watch. He had an unbelievable renaissance season with the Vancouver Canucks this season. All the betting took last year for making that trade and bringing in JT Miller for their first round pick, which could be a lottery pick, could end up working out. He was a very solid player, 60 points on the year. Very solid season for JT Miller. Actually led the Vancouver Canucks in points this year. Now looking at the Minnesota Wild, and they are pretty solid as well on the special teams. Nothing really, kind of league average, but, again, the Vancouver Canucks are very solid in their special teams. So this is definitely a slight mismatch. Power play, 21% for the Minnesota Wild, which is solid. Definitely nothing crazy, but it's pretty solid overall. They can score, and they are a pretty productive power play unit. Penalty kill, 77%, so that's a little bit concerning. They need to be able to keep the puck out of their net, especially on special teams against the Canucks, who have some very talented, high-potent offensive players. I think that could be an issue for the Minnesota Wild in this series, but we'll have to wait and see with that. Their record, 35-27-7 on the season. Pretty solid there for the Minnesota Wild. And then the top player to watch, I don't think anybody's surprised here, Kevin Fiala, who had a really solid season this year with the Minnesota Wild. Expect that to continue in this play-in series. I think that's going to be a huge difference maker for the Minnesota Wild. They don't have a ton of offensive depth. I think that's a disadvantage in this series, so Kevin Fiala is going to have to pull a lot of the weight for the offense here for the Minnesota Wild. Look at the season series back. All of them were back here in 2020, back in January. 4-1 victory for Vancouver, and then since then it's been all Minnesota. Both games in February, a 4-2 victory for Minnesota and a 4-3 shootout victory in favor of the Minnesota Wild. Pretty interesting matchup in that regard. Overall, both these teams are pretty solid, and I think it could be we're definitely in for an interesting series matchup here. Looking at the playoff history between these two teams, it was back in the 2002-2003 season where we saw the Minnesota Wild won that series for the conference semifinals in a 7-game series with the Vancouver Canucks. That's the only time these two teams have met in the postseason. And my prediction for this series, I have the Vancouver Canucks pulling away with this one in 5 games. I think both teams are very solid overall. but I really believe the depth and the goaltending of the Vancouver Canucks will be too much for this sort of rebuilding Minnesota Wild team. Not to mention the special teams is very much in favor of the Vancouver Canucks. I really believe in both categories they're top 10 in both. I think the Vancouver Canucks will be able to pull away with this series. Elias Pettersson's first time in the postseason, so that'll be quite exciting, as well as Quinn Hughes and Brock Besser. This is going to be an interesting playoffs here for the Vancouver Canucks. They are a young team, which will definitely be interesting. The Minnesota Wild have a couple more veterans, which I believe that can get them to 5 games in this series. But it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup overall. So if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news all around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. If you'd like this series, make sure to check out the rest of our playoff prediction, play-in series round predictions, and leave in the comment section down below who do you think will win this series. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.